Hello Magic Makers, welcome to Storytime with Mombierella. This is a young adult fiction and may be inappropriate for some younger audiences. Mother Knows Best, A Tale of the Old Witch by Serena Valentino. Copyright Disney Enterprises Incorporated, 2018. Chapter 27. The Flower's 8th Birthday. Mrs. Tittlebottom had outdone herself. She'd made an 8-tiered birthday cake covered in delicate marzipan flowers and colorful animals. It was an edible menagerie that rivaled even the famous confections concocted by Mr. Butterpants of Butterpants Bakery. It was a grand spectacle of a cake, a masterpiece. It was the most beautiful cake Mrs. Tittlebottom had ever seen, if she did say so herself. She was exceedingly proud of that cake and hoped Rapunzel would love it as much as Mrs. Tittlebottom loved Rapunzel. The cake was placed on a long table in the front parlor and surrounded by a heap of presents wrapped in gold paper with pink iridescent ribbons. Mrs. Pickle had made a lovely banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Rapunzel." And the room was decorated with red paper hearts and yellow tissue paper flowers. The only thing missing was Lady Gothel and her sisters. "By Hades, these mad women are vexing me to utter distraction." Mrs. Tittlebottom had half a mind to pound on the cellar door and command the witches come out at once. In all the years she'd lived in that house, she'd never gone down to the cellar, even in the first months after Gothel's return, when she'd started to sequester herself away, leaving poor Mrs. Tittlebottom to care for the baby Rapunzel alone. She never even knocked at the door. She just let her mistress be. So she wasn't about to knock on the door now, even though she was annoyed that they hadn't come up so they could start the celebration. "Mrs. Tittlebottom!" It was Mrs. Pickle. She was in a panic. Her face was red, and she was wringing her apron. "What is it that has you strangling your apron, girl?" Mrs. Tittlebottom said. And for a moment, Mrs. Pickle forgot all about Rapunzel. "Mrs. T, what's happened to you?" "What in fairy wings are you talking about, girl?" asked Mrs. Tittlebottom, becoming annoyed. "Well, look at you," she said. "Oh, yes, I probably have flour all over my face as usual. Now, what's got you so upset? Get on with it." "No, Mrs. T, look in the mirror. Something's happened," Mrs. Pickle said, pointing to the oval mirror that hung on the far wall of the parlor. "Go, look right away." "Good grief," Mrs. Tittlebottom said, as she made her way to the mirror. "I will if only you'll stop with this carrying on." But her tone changed when she saw her reflection. Oh, my! She couldn't believe her eyes. She was young. It had been so long since she'd seen that version of her face she almost didn't recognize it. She just stood there, staring at herself in disbelief. "Oh, Mrs. Tittlebottom, the reason I came to find you." "Yes, child, what is it?" she asked, still looking at herself. "I can't find Rapunzel. She's not in her room, and she's not outside." "What? Are you sure?" Mrs. Tittlebottom asked, whipping her head around to look at Mrs. Pickle. "Yes, I looked all over." "Rapunzel!" called Mrs. Tittlebottom. "Where are you, girl?" "She's nowhere to be found. You don't think she's downstairs with the mistresses, do you?" "Oh, I hope not," said Mrs. Tittlebottom, rushing to the cellar door. She flung open the door in a panic. "Rapunzel!" The girl didn't answer. Neither did the witches. All she heard were the soft, monotone sounds of the witches reciting some sort of song or poem. Mrs. Tittlebottom couldn't make out the words, but she could hear their voices growing louder each time they recited the poem again. She called down to the witches, "Ladies, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't find Rapunzel." Still no answer from the witches. It was eerie, like she was in a dream, calling out for help, but no one could hear her. She went down the first few steps, each of them creaking and moaning as she went. The sound of the witches' voices became louder. It was a dank, musty place. "It smells like evil down here." She hardly knew what she would find when she got to the bottom of the stairs, only taking a few at a time, hoping she could see what was happening from a distance. "Mrs. Tittlebottom, don't go down there alone!" She started at Mrs. Pickle's voice. "You about made me jump out of my skin. Shh! If you're coming with me, then keep quiet." The ladies descended the stairs slowly. The voices of the witches became cacophonous, hurting their ears. Then they heard them, the evil words. Even though it was strangely beautiful, something about the song struck fear into Mrs. Tittlebottom's heart. She knew something foul was happening to her little Rapunzel.
Flower gleam and glow, let your power shine. Make the clock reverse, bring back what once was mine. Heal what has been hurt, change the fate's design. Save what has been lost, bring back what once was mine. What once was mine.
Mrs. Tittlebottom rushed down the stairs. She couldn't have imagined a more horrific scene. The four witches were in a semicircle, their bloodied hands linked and dripping on Rapunzel's sleeping body. The witches' eyes were rolled back into their heads, and in front of them were three bodies, two beautiful dead young women and Rapunzel sleeping between, with her long hair brushed out and blanketing the dead beauties. Her hair glowed as the witches sang their song, which seemed to be penetrating the dead and lovely creatures. Mrs. Pickle screamed, drawing the witches out of their trance. Nothing about the scene was natural, especially the contortions of the witches' faces after being brought out of their trance. They were stupefied, and their bodies were twisting in ways that didn't seem possible, in ways that brought terror to Mrs. Tittlebottom. It was as if something within them were breaking, snapping, causing the witches to cry out in pain. Their peals of horrific screams were like the things of nightmares, but nothing was more unimaginable than the image of poor Rapunzel, laying there among those dead things as if dead herself. Gothel's mouth bubbled with black goop as she struggled to spit out her words.
"Look what you've done, you fool! You ruined it!"
"What have you done to Rapunzel?" screamed Mrs. Tittlebottom. Lucinda waved her hand at Mrs. Tittlebottom, causing her to fly backward and smash into a shelf covered in books and glass bottles, which tumbled down on the poor unconscious woman. Gothel waved her away. "No, Lucinda, no. Don't hurt her." Lucinda gave Gothel a queer look.
"Why not, sister? She ruined our spell. She deserves to die."
"I want her to live. I need her," she said, looking at Mrs. Tittlebottom's young face, no longer marked by deep lines. "And what about this one?" asked Lucinda, pointing to Mrs. Pickle, who was huddled in the corner crying. "Oh, you can kill her," said Gothel. "She's nothing to me."
"Very good," said Lucinda, laughing. "Sisters, you heard Gothel. Take care of the simpleton while I wipe Mrs. Tittlebottom's memory."
Thank you so much for listening. Please remember, like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, share with a friend, comment down below. And remember, let it go and keep moving forward. Have a magical day. Bye.